Okay.
Yes, sir. Started.
Okay. So now we have with Aarti Omar, research fellow at Department of Management Studies, IIT Madras, and she deals arts and GARS models in our workshop, and she's working in the area of credit risk, default risk, etc. related topics. And Aarti's papers appeared in Pacific Basin Finance Journal and A Category Journal. And the paper talks about extension of Merton model in emerging Asian countries. And also, her paper appeared in the review in Finance Research Letters. It's talk about firms' internal dynamics with default risk. And it's a very eminent, growing academician as well as researcher. So I'm happy to welcome you, Aarti Omar, to our session. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor that Biju has invited me for this workshop. Am I audible to all of you, audience?
Yeah. Audible, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Biju, for inviting me for this workshop.
I think when you start presentation,
as we
it's better to mute video, then it will be better experience
yeah,
in
sure,
the
sure,
screen.
sure. I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. Okay. So shall we pick the art and GARCH model? I think Vijay already introduced me enough. So my name is Aarti Omar. I'm a research fellow in the area of quantitative finance. I'm working in the area of credit risk, and final year fellow of Department of Management Studies, IIT Madras. So today, when Viju told me about this workshop, then okay, he told me, why don't you discuss with the Arch and GARCH model? I said, okay. So today I have come up with some brief introduction about Arch and GARCH. And we have one more session where we would be doing some practical, hands-on. Today I would be taking a little bit on the R model, R coding also for Dutch model, so that you will get introduction about the GARCH model and kind of practice that once we are having the practical session, so where I would be giving you some data and then trying to look at that whether you are able to implement the model and whether you are able to utilize the data with what we have already studied today. So let us begin with. So
Aarti, can you mute your video and yeah.
I mute my video. So in the part one, this presentation is divided into three parts. Part one, which is about the need of heteroscedastic model, and then we will talking about a little bit about serial relation, then volatility clustering, and the features of financial time series data. So this is the introduction part, that why do we need the heteroscedastic models. We have a time series, lots of models are available. Why there is a need of Arch and GARCH kind of model, or why there is a need of such kind of modeling in the for the financial time series data. So if we begin with the introduction, so basically what is the objective when we go for the conditional heteroscedastic model? So our objective is to look into the future returns and to analyze the future returns. When we see the past data, so we always try to look for or to predict for the future returns, right? So in that case, what happened? It's very difficult to understand what would be the future return given the market is very volatile. And when the market is very volatile, it's very difficult for us to predict whether market will go up or down tomorrow based upon the current prices, given the models are available with us. So this for some more sophisticated models. So there the need arises for the conditional heteroscedastic models. So the point is, what we can observe only the historical returns. So, and we wanted to predict the future distributions of the return, maybe, or maybe let's say prices. So what we have, we can only say, we can only look back the historical return. But the point is, so far we used to make the assumptions that the past, the future distributions of the time series, whether it is a return or the stock prices, they are related with the historical data, or you can say that you can say that our future will be depending upon the past. So far this is the assumptions we keep in our mind while predicting the future data, right? But the point is, as you can say, downside, we have two assumptions. The one is that the future returns are depending upon the historical distribution, but that is not always true. As you might have seen number of times when the crisis happens in the market, where the in the past the market is going very smoothly, but suddenly the burst comes. So it's very difficult to assess at that time what was the cause, and then we started working on, and then we understand, okay, so this is not related to the past. So basically what I'm trying to say, our future returns not always, or the future distribution of the data not always related with the, or not always same as the historical distribution, that means the past distributions. Okay, the second thing is, the ordering of data is very important. So what do you mean by order of the data? Meaning to say, the historical information is completely can we can estimate based upon the order of the data. But if we have the order of the data and information on the ordering of the data, we can predict the future prices. So it will help us to predict the future prices. So I will let you, I will give you a much more detailed introduction on this. So you will get aware of what I'm talking about. Right now, it might be very, cloudy what I'm talking about, but just listen to me and you will understand over the period of time that what I'm talking about right now. So you basically understand two things, that the need of conditional heteroscedastic models are required because we have two assumptions. The one is future prices can be predicted from the past prices, the one assumption, which is not always true. The second thing is that the parameters of historical distributions are estimated without attention to the ordering of the. So ordering of the data that plays a very important role for the future predictions. Okay, of course we don't have a tool from where we can test the assumption one. We don't have any kind of statistical tools available, but to test the second assumptions we do have the tools from which we can understand the importance of the ordering of the data. And if we get the information about the ordering of the data, it would be easy for us to predict the future prices. So there are two tools. One is called the serial correlation, and the second is called the volatility clustering in the data. Okay. So let me take you through what is called the serial correlation. I hope you have already come across serial correlation throughout this workshop, but let me revise it again for the purpose of this particular. So, what do you mean by the serial correlation? So, we have basically three types of serial correlation. The one is the positive serial correlation, second is negative, and the third is no serial correlation, which is called random walk. I hope you all have heard about random walk model in the finance area. We very much talk about the random walk in the prices and all. So, positive serial correlation that the on an average return, or let's say prices, tends to follow by another above average returns or prices. Negative serial correlations and above average returns or prices tends to follow a below average returns or prices. Meaning to say, if positive correlation means if the one is moving x direction, this will also move to the x direction. Whereas negative serial correlation means one will move x direction, other will move let's say minus x direction. Okay, so this is called the negative serial correlation. And no serial correlation is basically when the likelihood of average return does not followed by the above average return or the below average return. It's a very random, it can be moved anywhere the 2 points are moving. So there is there is no trend that they are going together or they are going in an opposite direction. So that is called no serial correlation. Now, what is the importance of the serial correlation in finance? So that importance arises from the market efficiency theory. I hope you have heard about market efficiency theory, which says that the current prices, or let's say the observed prices of an asset, fully reflects all the information available in the market. So that is what the market efficiency theory says. Of course, there are three categorization: weak form, semi-weak form, and the strong form. I'm not going into that, but because of this context, I'm bringing it into the picture. So market efficiency says that the observed prices of an asset fully reflects all the information available in the price in the market. Now the point is, if market efficiency theory holds true, then what happens suddenly when a new information comes into the market? So we see there is a huge change in the prices of the stocks. Either they go upside or they go downside. That is what we call the market is, that is what every day we are seeing in the newspaper, or let's say on the financial news, that today market has rised, tomorrow market is going down, and today market is having a bull nature or market is having a bear nature kind of thing. So if market efficiency holds true, then how this new information is getting absorbed in the prices and then getting sudden reflection in the prices change? We never know if today market will end, let's say, on 23,000. We never know whether tomorrow market will open at the same price or whether it will be open up or down. We never know about it, right? But we are, once we see the prices, let's say today's newspaper when I saw, and if I see that the NSE has gone up, so I will assume that there is a good information which has come to the market, because of that it has a push for upward direction. But if I see that today NSE has fallen this much of points, so that means there was some bad news around, because of that, which has pushes the prices to go downward directions. So meaning to so I hope you understand what is the market efficiency and how this new information coming to the market and it is suddenly changing or suddenly pushing the prices go up. So gives a very so since all the information is already discounted in the stock prices, then how come this new information is coming? So definitely it is a surprise to the market. Market is not discounting this in the current prices, and this is a sudden surprise to the market which leads the prices to go up and down. So that meaning to say, but we can't tell ahead that whether it would be a good information or bad information. After seeing the prices only, or after analyzing the trend, we can only then understand whether it was a good information or bad information. So that meaning to say, there is no way to predict prices to go up and down. So that gives a rise to the random walk model. I hope you understand how this, random walk model has evolved from the market efficiency theory. So random walk model says that there is no way to tell that the prices will go up or down relative to its current prices. And whereas market efficiency theory says that all the information has been discounted to the current prices, what we see today. So now, what is the implications of the random walk model? So we can see the returns. So when we see the serial correlations in the stock prices, we find the prices or the returns have very low serial correlations. Thus, the testing serial correlation in a stock return is basically you are testing the market efficiency. Market efficiency says everything is there in the stock prices. That means the current stock price is depending upon the past information. That meaning to say it has a serial correlation. Whereas random walk model says that there is no serial correlation between present and the past prices. That is the reason we can't predict the future prices. Okay. So I hope you understand this context. And this is the first tool to test the ordering of the data. And then how do we test the serial correlation? So basically this is a mathematical formula correlation between present price. Let's say xt denotes the time value of the time series on day t. So we have an autocorrelation formula xt and xt minus j. That means the lag j, whether you wanted to have it for 1 day past, last 1 day or last to last 1 day correlation. So that is how you keep on changing the value of the j. And but the row not, basically, if you wanted to see the serial correlation of xt with the xt, that will always be 1. So in the R, we have a function of this serial correlation of testing. We will see it. I will show you the data also. But let me continue with the theory part, and then we will switch to the practical application of it. So now there is, as I told you, there are two tools to see the ordering of the data. So first is the serial correlation, and second is called the volatility clustering. Now, what is the volatility clustering and conditional heteroscedasticity? So volatility clustering, it can be defined in two ways. The first is high volatility clustering, or second is it can have a high volatility clustering a data can show, or it can also show a low volatility clustering. Now, what do you mean by clustering? Clustering is basically when some information is gathering at one place. So it creates a cluster of the information, right? So high volatility clustering tends to be followed by high volatility. That means you find, I'll show you one data where you can see, you can see this right hand side graph where you can see the data. You can see the larger, spikes, and then there is a normal series tend to be normal, and then again there is a sudden spikes in 2020. So one, you can see near 2008 to 2009 we have a lot of observations together, and then nearly 2020 2019 we have a lot of observations together. So these periods are the high volatility clustering periods. Okay, so these are very this time series data has a high volatility clustering in these two phases. So these two phases, as we know, what were the incident? 2008 global financial crisis we had, and it has had the impact on the Indian stock market. And whereas
Aarti, your voice is breaking right now. Please check.
Hello.
Yeah, its voice was breaking. Snehit, please pause the recording and we will again restart.
Yeah. So, okay, till what point I was audible? Can you just remind me till what point I was audible? Serial correlation I was talking about, then I was talking about testing of the serial correlation. Was it audible?
You were talking about
Long run
volatility
volatility.
clustering. You were mentioning about volatility
Long-
clustering.
Can see-
Breaking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I have received it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Start.
So
Hello.
Aarti.
okay, sixth slide I've already covered. Come to the second one, volatility clustering. Yeah. Yeah, this one. Okay. So I'm extremely sorry for the trouble. Okay.
No problem. Can continue.
Okay. So yes, I think I've made clear about what is the volatility clustering. Now coming to coming to the observation of volatility clustering in the financial data. So ordering of the data really matters. Now, how ordering of the data really matters, and then how these models have evolved. So the point is, if you come to the slide number. Come to the slide number 21. Can you please show me the slide number 21? Correct. So this is again the Nifty 50 return series. Here you can say there is no serial correlation on the original log return series. Okay. Now, can you come to the slide number 22? Correct. Now you can see the volatility clustering in the Nifty 50 returns. You can see there is a high volatility clustering. Why? Because the serial correlation is very, very high. Okay, meaning to say when we how to look into the now how to read the autocorrelation graph. So let me first tell you. So in this graph you can see there are two blue bands. So these two blue bands are nothing but the 95% confidence interval, and these bar which you can see, so if these bar they are crossing the blue lines whether upside or downside and in a sequence, so you can say there is a high serial correlation. But if you see that they are the bars, they are not crossing the blue lines and these are very random, so there is no autocorrelation on the serial correlation, right? So as you can see in the slide number 20, can you please switch to slide number 20? 21, sorry, 21. Yeah, so in 21 you can see the bar which most of the bars are within the 95% confidence interval. They are not crossing the blue line, so that is the reason, that is the meaning, you can say they are not having the autocorrelation. Okay, and when you see the 22 slide, come to the 22nd slide.
Snehit, please mute. Somebody's making
Can you
voice
please
noise.
come to the 22nd slide?
20 seconds.
Yeah. So here you can see the volatility clustering is very, very high because here all the bars are going beyond the 95% confidence interval. Now, how do you test the volatility clustering? So that is again a good thing to understand. So for the if you wanted to see the volatility clustering in the return series, then what you have to do, take the absolute value of the return series, okay, and take the autocorrelation function in our model. I will tell you how to do it. So take the absolute value of the return and plot the serial correlation graph. All right, it's a very simple thing. Take a absolute value of the return series and plot the graph of serial correlation. If you find such kind of graph where the bars are going beyond the 95% confidence interval, that says that there is a high volatility clustering. Now, how to cross check whether the ordering of the data is important or not. So for that purpose, what you have to do, you just randomize the return series. Okay, randomize the return series. Randomization means we always find the order of the series. Let's say 2008 to 2020, there is an order of the data, there is a sequence of the data, right? But what I'm trying to say, you randomize that order where the date does not matter, only you have a return series and you randomize it. Once you randomize the return series and take the absolute of that particular return series, now can you please switch to 23rd slide? Yes. Now, when you randomize the return series, see, you can see the heading also, volatility clustering of Nifty 50 permuted return series. Permuted means I have randomized it. And there is a function also you can see. I have randomized the return series and then there is an absolute value I've taken and I've plotted the graph. So you can see the autocorrelation function shows that there is no volatility clustering. Volatility clustering has gone completely. So I hope you understand what you mean by the ordering of the data. So far, I was trying to make you understand the importance of volatility clustering and the ordering of the data. So ordering of the data is very, very important. If you randomize the series, you will find there is no autocorrelation and volatility clustering will be gone. But if the data is in order, that means we always collect the data from the market, which is always in the order. That means the information is there, present. So, and that presentation will be shown in the volatility clustering. But when we randomize the data, the information is gone. So when information is gone, you cannot predict the future prices correctly, or let's say the future return series correctly. So I hope you understood what you mean by the importance of the volatility clustering. and that is why these Arch and Garch models have arrived to capture that information. Because see, the ordinary regression model, or let's say the ordinary time series models, they are unable to capture the information which is present in the time series data, which are highly volatile. So that brings that brings the Arch and Garch model into the picture to capture that particular information, to capture that particular information. Now I request you to move to slide number 8. Yes, so here I have written you how to test the volatility clustering. Yes.
Ma'am, you said that the time series data, if we randomize that,
Hmm.
then there will be no presence of autocorrelation as well as volatility clustering, isn't that?
Yeah, so what I said, autocorrelation will not be there, but I said randomize the data and take the absolute value, because we are checking the volatility clustering. Okay, you randomize the data, take the absolute value of that particular series, and then plot the ACF curve, or let's say autocorrelation curve, and then you will find the volatility clustering will be gone.
But
Am I
madam,
clear to you?
but
Yes.
madam, is it necessary for the Arch and Garch model to the data to be remain in a order?
See, data has to be remain in order. What do you mean by order? What I told you, order means you collect the data, let's say 2008 till 2020, right? So there is a sequence of the date. So that is the order of the data, which shows there is a clustering, volatility clustering, which I have shown you in slide number 21. Correct. But if you there would be if you randomize the data, what will happen? Let's say 2008 data, you bring it to the place of 2020 observation, you place in the place of, let's say, 2010. So that is what the randomization. Am I right?
Okay,
Am I right?
that means shifting the base actually.
Shifting the place. Randomization is what you are, the sequence which you have collected the data from 2008 to 2020, that sequence you are changing, where time does not matter, where the date does not matter. You're just, shuffling the observation. I think that's the correct word, shuffling the observations.
In a randomized sense.
In the randomized manner, right? And then if you take the absolute of that particular series and then you plot the ACF curve, what you will find, because ordering of the data has gone, the information given in that data has gone, you cannot find any volatility clustering, because serial correlation graph shows there is no serial correlation now anymore.
Because the order is removed actually.
Yes. So I hope now you catch the point. That order is nothing but the information which is present in the data. I hope you understand the minute thing, the data what we collect from the from the sources. So that's the importance of the data. If you do anything with the data, sometimes we play with the data. That's okay. But the point is the information what is present in the data is very, very important to predict the future things. And that I'm talking about the secondary data. I'm not talking about the primary data. Of course, we do a lot of things with that, but particularly when it comes to the financial time series data, ordering matters a lot. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Let us say that you randomize the data and take the absolute values of the log returns, and like you said, then the ACF will be gone. The autocorrelation will be gone. Let us say autocorrelation is still present.
Okay.
Then what is the reason for that, and what is the solution?
Yeah, but sir, it won't be present there. It won't be.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, it won't be present there. So that is what we have to do in the practical session. And I would request you all to have today whatever we are discussing. If you take any of the stock from the yahoofinance.com, and you can do whatever I'm telling you today, I'm teaching you today. You can do it practically, and you can come up on next day and tell me if what we have discussed is correct or not, because I have already done a lot of practical exercise, so I'm telling you. So randomization will remove the ordering of the data, and thereby it will also remove the information which is inherent in the data. Am I clear to everybody?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
fine.
Thank you.
So, so the takeaway is that volatility of the stock prices are predictable. That gives us a hunch that volatility of stock prices is predictable. There is a information hidden in the data which can help us to predict the future prices. Now, that's the reason Arch and Garch model came into the picture, because they capture the volatility. Because we wanted to predict the future volatility, and that is how these models are evolved. I hope the background is clear to everybody after having a lot of noises in between. My voice is on, or a lot of things. I hope the background is clear to everybody now. Okay. Now come to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the same thing which I've discussed, so I need not to repeat it again. Come to the slide number 9. Now, what are the challenges? Next slide number 10. Yeah. What are the challenges in modeling financial time series data? So I've already discussed few points. I'm just summarizing everything here. So the challenges, we have the volatility clustering, as I told you. Then we have a conditional heteroscedasticity, where you find there is a constant variance, but then suddenly there is a jump in the volatility. So that's again, so there in the jump you find a lot of volatilities are clustering together. Then there's something called leverage effect. What is the leverage effect? So basically we say when the market is down, market is falling, so we find that there is a high volatility at that time. Then the market the market is rising, so that is called the leverage effect. Falling market has falling market is more volatile as comparison to the rising market, so that's called leverage effect. Then financial time series data usually non-normal, and it exhibit the flatter tails and excess peakness. Okay, so that's something's called leptokurtosis. So most of the time series data, they are not normally distributed. That is one of the property that we assume in the time series data, which is actually not true. So most of the time series data is more leptokurtosis. Leptokurtosis means their tails are more flatter and they have the excess peakness. Once I will take you the example, I'll give you the graph and other things, so you will visualize and you will understand what it is. And why do we need to model the time series data? So most of the time, when as an asset holder, we are interested in modeling the left tails of the financial data or the stock return. Left tails means we are more interested to know the negative returns. That means the loss, what we are going to have after holding a portfolio of asset, to estimate what is the value at risk and what is the expected shortfalls. So once we are having this, so we can discover the potential loss and we can try to avoid those loss. So of course, these are important at everywhere, in the banks, when you are a portfolio manager, for the mutual funds, as a company, even individual stockholders. So it's very important. Now, coming to the properties of the leptokurtosis, this distribution exhibit the flatter tails, and they are having excess peakness due to the large number of excessive negative return. I'm sorry to mention it here, excessive negative returns, because we are more interested to the left tail side. So leptokurtosis time series data usually have time varying variance. That means the clustering will be present, and they have the excess kurtosis. That means the fat tails. So these above features, they lead to violation of the homoscedasticity as well as autocorrelation of OLS model. That is the reason the linear models are unable to capture these features of the financial time series data, and that is why we need Arch and Garch model. Now coming to the next slide, number 11.
Hello, madam.
Yes.
Madam, as we know, the time series process involves a data generating process, that is a stochastic process. That means a
Yes.
sequence of random variables, those are ordered in time.
Hmm.
Ma'am,
Okay.
how can you please just explain how the variables are random? I got the idea of how they are ordered in time. You just explained, but a sequence of random variables, as we say, how the variables are going to be random
Okay,
or randomly
so
selected.
instead of random, can we use the word permute? You can make a different permutation of the given series, because I think random word is confusing you again and again. But can we say we have a time series data from 2008 to 2020? So there is a one kind of permutation of the data. Once we make a different kind of permutation of the data, okay, I hope you understand the permutation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if we take a different kind of permutation of the data, and then if you check the autocorrelation of that absolute value, you will find your volatility clustering is gone. So instead of saying the randomization, I think it's confusing, maybe most of you. So we can say permutation of the data.
Okay,
Okay.
therefore, can we have this concept like this? Suppose we are having a data of from 2000 and 2000 and up to 2020. 20 years data
Okay.
we are having. Suppose this is the
Okay.
population. Okay,
Okay.
from this population, can we draw samples in a randomized fashion like 2008 to 2020, then 2006 to 2020?
But that
Both are
randomization, yeah, that is the random. Okay, that you are right. That we select the random sample. Okay, that is called sampling technique. I'm not talking about sampling technique. That is a random sampling that you are randomly selecting, let's say from 2006 to 2020, or let's say 2010 to 2020. Okay, that is called random sampling. There are different methods of sampling, right? Choosing the data or choosing the sample out of population. But here what I'm trying to tell you, that here when we are permuting the data, the order does not matter. In your case, when you're selecting the data, let's say from 2010 to 2020, out of the population 2008 to 2020, that is again in order. 2010 to 2020 again in order, right? Hello,
yes, ma'am.
am I right to you? um, uh, may I know your good name, please?
Ma'am, Shantanu Ghosh.
Shantanu. Shantanu, sir, can we discuss this again? If you have any further doubt, we can discuss this. I would love to take this, but shall we move forward? Otherwise, what will happen?
Yes,
Time
yes,
will
yes.
lapse and
Sure,
we
sure,
won't be
sure,
able to do
sure,
anything further.
sure, ma'am. Sure,
Sure.
sure, ma'am.
Okay. Don't mind. I will take all your questions. I would love to answer your, queries, but we will do it maybe offline or,
Okay, okay, okay. That's
Okay.
fine because
Yeah.
we have a time constraint. Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, time is less, and again from my end there is a lot of issues of the network. Okay. Okay, all right. So that is what. Now coming to the point, somebody says that okay, we already have a lot of volatilities. How to measure the volatility? Somebody says the standard deviation and variance. So these are the two measures to measure the volatility. Correct. These are the two measures to measure the volatility. But then, what is the problem in the historical volatility? Why do we need to have a conditional volatility model? We already have the historical volatility measures available. So the point is, what happened when we are having a historical volatility model, like there is something called rolling standard deviation. So what is the challenge with the rolling standard deviation calculation? That is again depends upon the historical data, historical volatility it will use. So what it does, it uses the equal weights for all the cases. Means more recent observations should be given more relevant weight, and others would be given the less. So again there would be a partiality in the data, and it might not able to capture the let's say particular observation which is important for our prediction. So there is the flaws with the historical volatility what we can say tools. And it also there is also the issue of the overlapping of the observation which lead to the correlations issues. So these are few things which which further give a more weightage to the arch and Garch model. So shall we move forward for the next slide? 12, slide number 12. Yes. So in this part 2, we will discussing the arch and Garch model. I would be Garch model, Arch model, these areas are very, very vast. We have the combinations of the model, but most of the time, the standard Garch model, Garch 1-1 model with normal distribution or with the skewed student T distribution or with the student T distribution are more, sometimes works more efficiently. Then we can use the asymmetric Garch model. We can see asymmetric Garch model. So I'm not going to cover all the cases, but I'll give you a hint how to understand which model is good, which model is not good, which model you have to look forward. So shall we move forward for the introduction part? Slide number 13. Yes. So Arch model was proposed by the Robert Engel in 1982, and its full form is autoregressive conditional heteroscedasticity model. So according to the Arch model, the error term at time t depends on the squared error terms from the previous period. So here the volatility, basically in this model, the volatility does not depends upon the past volatility. It only depends upon the innovation term. Innovation term is nothing but the error term, we used to say. So there are three equations. The one is the mean equation, second is the variance equation, and third is called the distribution model. So variance model, we have a mean plus the error term. So MT is the constant, and then you have the third equation, which is the here it is written for with variance equation. So variance equation, you can see the variance is depending upon the past value or the lag value of the error term. We don't have any kind of past variance term, right? So this is our Arch model. So Arch 1 model, how do we define? It's a sigma square t is equals to alpha naught plus alpha 1 e square t minus 1. So only one past value we are adding. So this is Arch 1 model. Arch 2 model would be sigma square t is equals to alpha naught plus alpha 1 e square t minus 1 plus e square t minus 2. That means 2 means we have a two lag values added. Arch 3 model means we are adding 3 lag values of error term. So this is how it goes, right? Then you can see what is the unconditional variance of the Arch model. So this is also given, and then we have the conditional variance. So these are more mathematical and technical terms. So I'm not going to discuss these things because it would be difficult otherwise to make you understand. Let's go to the next slide. Let's discuss the Garch model. Okay, so Garch model is basically, the full name is Generalized Autoregressive Conditional Heteroscedasticity Model, and this generalized autoregressive conditional heteroscedasticity model is used for the analyzing time series data which are volatile. Okay, so I've given Garch 1-1 model. Garch 1-1 model, we have a 3 format: mean equation, variance equation, and distribution model. So mean model is nothing but we have a return is equals to expected return, which is alpha naught, and this is the constant, plus variance and multiplied by error term. Okay, then we have a variance equation. So here the variance equation is depending upon the error term as well as your variance, past value of the variance. So that is the difference between Arch and Garch model, that it also depends upon the past value of volatility. And then you have a distribution model. So we assume the error term is white noise. That means it is distributed as a normally and having a mean 0 and variance 1. So okay, one more thing in the variance equation, this error term we called Arch effect, and this when we add this ht minus 1, that is nothing but the variance, that is called the Garch effect. Okay, now Garch in mean model, I'm just telling you the equation right now, so I'll give you hands-on practice also, don't worry about that. So Garch in mean model, basically we are adding the variance in the mean equation. That is the only difference. You can see there is no further difference. Only the difference, we are adding the variance in the mean equation. So these are the two different model which we use. Basically we use Garch 1-1 model most of the time. Coming to the next slide. Okay, so this is called student T-Garch model. So in this student T-Garch model, now you can see the mean equation and variance equation, they both are same, but only the distribution model is different. Now distribution model means in the previous model, we were assuming the error term is having a white noise distribution. That means error term is normally distributed, right? But when we are saying student T-Gauge model, so we say the error term is not normally distributed. It is having a T distribution, right? Why there is a T distribution and why it is not normally distributed, as I already discussed you before, most of the time series data, they are not normal by nature. They are not normally distributed. They are leptokurtosis. That means they are having a fatter tail, and they're having excess peakness. So which distribution defines it best? That is a T-shaped distribution. So that is what called student T-Gauge model. That is sometimes much better than the normal model if you are using. Okay, so I will tell you how to calculate that also. Going to the next slide. Now coming to the asymmetric gauge model, that is also very much useful and important in day-to-day basis. So basically what it says, often the downward movements in the market are highly volatile than the upward movement of the same magnitude. So I told you, I defined that it is called a leverage effect in the market. That means market does not consider bad news and good news equally. Okay, it has an impact. It has a differential impact on the market. If it is the good news, market will go up, but it will be going gradually. But if it is the bad news, market will go down, and the declining market is more volatile as comparison to the rising market, and market declines much faster than the rising market. The reason being, the reason is selling. So what happened when the market is declining, there is a lot of short selling also happens in the market. So because of that, the price falls further. Even the people, those who are having their stocks with them, they feel that the market is going down and they wanted to sell it out and come out of the market. So that is the reason when the market falls, it is highly volatile. When the prices are going up, nobody goes and buy the share immediately, and number of people will not go and buy the share. But when the market is falling, everybody thinks that their money is going to shrink. So they will go and sell it off. So when market, then everybody is going and selling it off. So what will happen? The prices will further come down. So that is that is called asymmetric effect of good and bad news in the market. So you can see the good news part, the curve of the good news, that is gradually increasing, but bad news part, that's exponential. That's a decline exponentially, or there's a fast declining as comparison to the rising market. All right. So these are the two things, and then we will move further to the next slide. Next slide, please. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, next slide.
Next. Sorry. Okay, fine.
Yeah. Now, types of asymmetric gauge models. So we have a T-gauge, and we have, T-gauge is the threshold gauge, and then we have exponential gauge model. So there is a small change in the equation. You should not worry about the equation and should not fear with the equation. Equations are just the notation to describe the model, so you should not fear about. You can see mean equation is same as what we are keep on seeing since the beginning. It's a return is equals to alpha naught, which is x's return, plus under root of ht. Under root of ht is nothing but ht is a sigma square. So when we take the under root of ht, that will become a standard deviation, and then we have an error term. Okay, so this is the mean equation, and this is same all around the model we have seen. Now coming to the variance equation. So gauge model is always tweak around the variance equation, either or around the distribution model. So most of the time you have to tweak between the variance equation and the distribution model. So variance equation says that my past volatility will be depending upon the lag value of the past volatility as well as the lag value of the error term. And then we have one information, this term, asymmetric effect term. So that is lambda multiplied by epsilon squared t minus 1 dt minus 1. Okay, so this term will be capturing your asymmetric effect. So how it will be capturing the asymmetric effect? If lambda is equals to 0, okay, let's say lambda is equals to 0. So if lambda is equals to 0, what will happen? Only this, we will be getting only three terms in the equation. St is equals to alpha naught plus beta 1, ht minus 1 plus alpha 1, epsilon square t minus 1. So this equation is very familiar to us. This is called Garch-1 equation, right? So if lambda is equals to 0, I'm talking about, that says there is no asymmetric effect of noise. There is a symmetric Garch model. This is called symmetric Garch model, or you can say the standard Garch model, right? But if lambda is non-zero, so that is called symmetric Garch model. When lambda is not zero and lambda is greater than 0, okay, there are two conditions which I am going to satisfy together. Lambda is greater than 0, okay. So when lambda is greater than 0, what will happen? That reflect the bad news, okay, that reflect the leverage effect. That means the bad news increases the volatility. Are you getting my point? So when lambda is less than 0, it shows there is an impact, there is an asymmetric effect. But if lambda is greater than 0, it says that there is a leverage effect. That means the market is falling. There is a high volatility in the market because of the bad news. So
Hello,
these
madam.
are the two. Yes.
Madam, can
Hello?
we say that lambda is a representation of the market sensitivity?
No, market sensitivity is different thing. That's the beta.
Sensitivity means the reaction actually, basically the market reaction. Because if we just assume that lambda is 0, the whole model is Garch-1, then
Yes,
the
yes.
main function is of lambda actually. Basically, it is inserting the information of the sentiments of the
Yes,
market.
inserting the information is actually market sensitivity, we will not say, otherwise it will be confused with the CAPM model.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
So lambda is basically capturing the asymmetric effect of information.
Sure, sure.
Am I
That
right?
means the degree of asymmetry can be represented by that lambda actually.
Degree, not degree. We should be very careful the words what we choose. So degree
Sure.
we cannot say, it's because it's nowhere it's going to measure the degree of whether it's a bad news or good news. But yes, it says that there is a leverage effect or there is no leverage effect. So leverage effect would be when lambda is greater than 0, there would be a leverage effect. If lambda is equals to 0, there is no leverage effect, or there is no at all asymmetric effect of the noise. It would be Garch-1 model. Am I right?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Let's move forward to the next slide. Yes. Next is called exponential Garch model. So there is a small difference between T-Garch and E-Garch. So in exponential Garch model, basically we present the equation in the logarithmic form and we say there is an exponential change in the market or exponential change in the volatility when there is a news arise. It's the positive or negative, right? So you can see log HT, we have the mean equation again same. So you should not worry about mean equation until unless you want to tweak it. Of course, there are variant of the mean equations, but I am taking a very simple example of mean equation, which is constant alpha naught plus we have again the variance and error term. Now coming to the variance equation, so we are having log of volatility is equals to alpha naught plus beta 1 log of lag term of the volatility plus then we have this epsilon naught epsilon t minus 1 and the expectations of epsilon t minus 1, that is also one term, plus the lambda, again there is a lambda. So that will again capture equation is more or less similar, there is a little difference, but effect of lambda is same. Again here, if the lambda is positive, there would be a leverage effect, or we will say the bad news increasing the volatility. Lambda is less than 0, there would be news impact, which would be asymmetric. And if lambda is equals to 0, we will be having again Garch-1 model kind of thing. So here the log of conditional variance equation shows the leverage effect is exponential than the quadratic. So this Tarch model, or we can say the threshold Garch model, that says the behavior is quadratic equation in terms of quadratic equation, whereas the log terms, when we are adding, we are saying the leverage effect is exponential. So only this is the difference in Garch, Tarch and E-Garch model. Now coming to the third part, can you please move the slide? Yes. Go to the next part. So how much time do I have, Biju? So accordingly I will how much time do
Supposed
I
to
have?
be 1 o'clock till 1 o'clock. So if
Till
you
1 o'clock. Okay.
will end 12:50, then we can have 10 minutes for discussions and all.
Yeah, sure. So let me just take you through some graphs which I've plotted from R, and if time permits, I will take you through R also. Otherwise, we will do in the next session. All right.
Okay.
The first series, you can see we have a Nifty 50 time series. So this is the simple plot, time series plot of the Nifty 50. Then what I did, I plotted the log return. Most of the time we are interested in the log return, matlab returns or the log returns of the series. So when I plotted this log return series, so first of all, what will happen? It will remove all the trend and it will make the series more stationary, right? Because here in this series you can see there is a volatility which I can see, but at the same time there is a trend in the variance I can see, and the series is also non-stationary. I hope you have studied stationary, non-stationary part. So in this series, what I found that most of the time it is moving around the average, but at 2008 2009 we find a lot of observations are peaking up and down, and near 2019-20 there are again observations which are falling apart from the average line. Okay, so this is my return series. So after seeing this return series, what I got a hunch, I'm just telling you the process how to identify where I have to go for Garch modeling, or you have to go for ordinary least square, or maybe some other time series modeling. So when I see this series, I got a hunch that there is a volatility clustering around 2008-9 period, and around 2019-20 period, there is a volatility clustering. Now I want to confirm whether this volatility clustering is there or not, or how do I confirm then? So first, next slide. Yeah, so first I will check the simple serial correlation on the log return series. So what I found, there is no serial correlation in the log return series. So if there is no serial correlation, okay, fine. Still I don't know what to do with this series. If I don't know what to do with this series, I will check the volatility clustering. I wanted to confirm whether volatility clustering is present or not. See, observation is one part, but statistical proof is the second part. So observation, I observed, yes, there are some kind of volatility clustering around series, but I want to statistically confirm whether there is a presence or not. So first I will check a normal serial correlation on the return series. So what I found, there is no serial correlation. It says that there is a random walk model. So that theory applies in the financial time series data, that is proven. Next slide. Yeah, so when I run the volatility clustering to confirm the volatility clustering, when what I did,
Madam,
I have taken, yes,
madam, can you go to slide 20, please?
20. Can you please come to the slide 20? Yes.
Sir, the data, madam, the data here is on price series in Nifty 50 in the left hand side, isn't that?
Yes.
And we can see that the data is non-stationary as it is hiking up actually.
Yes,
Uh,
non-stationary
we,
completely.
to make it stationary, we can use the log series as well as we can difference the series also.
Correct. You are right. See, only if you see the difference, what is the difference meaning? Difference is basically the current observation minus the past observation.
Exactly.
And if you remember, when we take the log of the return is what? We are taking what we are doing. We are log of, let's say, present price divided by the past price. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So
It is
Log of,
actually in the
I
index
should not
form.
go
I
into
believe
the
it.
mathematical
Yes,
part.
yes,
Sorry,
yes, yes. It is actually the indexing formula actually. Log, using
yeah,
the log, it
indexing
is
formula.
actually indexing formula, and this is actually in
Correct.
absolute terms.
Absolute
Differential is
terms.
in absolute terms, but the
Correct.
impact
So
will be somehow similar.
yes, but the point is most of the time, if you take the log of the data, actually why this concept came log of the data, apart from the financial series, even if you have even if you have some kind of economic indicators, okay. So if that data is available in absolute terms, if you take the log of the series, it will smooth the series.
Sure,
So
sure.
if there is a component of stationarity that will non-stationarity that will go automatically. So that is the first thing what we'll do. First, we will take the log of the series. But
Then
after
the
taking the
data
log of the
difference.
series, yeah, after even after taking the log of the series, if there is non-stationarity present, that will be confirmed by ADF test or PP test or KPS test. There are tests, auto decay Fuller test and all. So once they will confirm there is still non-stationary present, then what we will be doing, we will again take the difference of the series. Are you getting my
Okay, okay.
point?
Yes,
So
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
first thing is, let us do something very simple, which is the log. Even economic indicator series we are having, so we use find the trend and all. So when we take the log, it will smooth the series. So automatically non-stationary part will be gone. But again, if the test are confirming there is a stationarity, a non-stationarity available in the data through ADF or PP test,
Then
we
we
will
should
take
be
the
again
difference.
differencing the series.
Yeah, then we will be differencing the series. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Now, coming to the clustering part, yeah, volatility clustering part. Can you go upside 20-second? Yeah, 20-second one. So I want to confirm my volatility clustering in this series. So what I will be doing, I have a return series. I will take the absolute term of the return series. Now, I mean, you might be wondering why I'm taking the absolute term. The reason being the variance is always positive. Am I right? Variance is always positive.
Yes.
Standard deviation can have plus minus sign. You can say plus minus sigma, but variance, which is sigma square, that is always positive. Correct. So absolute term will remove the negative returns. Basically, what I'm trying to say, it will, remove. I will only take the magnitude of the data. I will not take sign. I will not consider the sign. Okay, and then I will run the ACF plot, and then what I will find, my all the observations are crossing the blue barrier, which is the 95% confidence interval, which says that my data has volatility clustering. I hope this part I'm clear with. Okay, so these are the two things: observing the volatility clustering, and then statistically to prove that there is a volatility clustering available. Now coming to 24th slide.
Madam,
24. Yes.
madam, as we
Yes,
are
yes,
ignoring the signs actually in the 20-second slide, we
yes.
are basically trying to avoid the signs and try to map the magnitude of the effect. So can't we
Correct.
use variance instead of the absolute value?
See, you can also do square. You can square the log of return series. You can't use variance. See, variance only one observation you would be getting. Okay, variance is what you have the data from 2008 to 2020, let's say. Okay,
Yes,
when you calculate the variance, so it would be one value, right?
one statistic value. Yes, yes.
Yeah, one is statistical value, right? But I wanted to see volatility clustering in the data itself.
In the
Then
series,
only,
exactly.
then, so what you can do, instead of taking the absolute value of the return, you can square the returns. That will also remove your, positive, negative sign once you are squaring the data. But what will happen? The magnitude will become larger because you are
The
squaring
impact
it
will
up.
be increased. The impact will be increased.
Yeah, impact will be increased, and then you will see, of course, but you will find the same features will be available. Definitely you will be having all these observations crossing the blue lines. Okay, but only the thing is, because you have magnified the things. in terms of numbers, because you are squaring it up. So first, I mean, before squaring it up, I think it's a lot more easier to take the absolute value. Okay.
Okay,
Because
ma'am.
in both the way, our purpose is to remove the negative sign. So what is the first tool in hand? I have absolute, I have the modular, so I can use the
Ma'am,
absolute,
ma'am,
values.
this value is basically a type of diagnostic check that we are going to see that whether there is volatility clustering or not.
Yes, correct.
Because ma'am, if we use absolute value, then mathematical operations can be quite harder for rather
No,
using.
no. This is completely for the diagnostic check. That absolute values we are not going to use in the model. This
Sure,
is
sure.
only for the
For
volatility
diagnostic.
clustering checking.
Okay,
Okay,
ma'am.
I
Okay.
have never used absolute log return
Sure.
anywhere in the model.
In the
It's
model. Okay.
always been the original log returns.
It
Okay,
is
which
just
you
for
would be getting it.
identification purpose.
Yes, this is only for the identification purpose.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Coming to slide number 24. Yes. So let us begin with the, I hope so far you understood what is the Arch and Garch model, what is the purpose of Garch model, why we are going for Garch model, though we have the variety of other time series modeling. But I hope the purpose of this today's topic was to make you understand the importance of the Garch model. Why do we go for the Garch model? What is the need of the Garch model? So, till the point, whatever I've discussed, the information which I've accumulated from the various sources and tried to synthesize to present you in 1 hour, uh, just to give you insight the importance of the Garch model, I think I've delivered it. That when you have the data, time series data, which is highly volatile and where the order also matters a lot, you wanted to predict the future volatility of the data. And when you see the time series data, which is highly volatile, then it is not normally distributed. The Garch model comes into the picture because you have to go for conditional heteroscedasticity modeling. Okay, and where there the Garch model comes into the picture. This is the entire purpose of this entire presentation. Only 2-3 lines I can, if you want to summarize, you can summarize. I hope it is clear to everybody. Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Now, the main important, I hope everybody is more interested in knowing how to model Arch and Garch in the R software. So, first of all, what we have a library of univariate Garch model. Let me again tell you, there is univariate Garch model and there is a multivariate Garch modeling also. So, I have not gone through the multivariate Garch modeling. I'm just sticking with the univariate Garch modeling so far. So we have library called UGarch, which is for the univariate Garch model. And Garch model specification in R is defined as the UGarch spec. If I'm just trying to open my, R software and trying to share it with you, just let me know if I'm able to share the content. Can you please allow me to share the content?
Yeah, first of all, I will stop sharing, and
Yes,
after
yes.
that, you can share it. Snehit, I'm stop.
Yeah, yes, sir. I will.
Please give the share option.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just give you a brief introduction because we don't have much time, but at least I will, just show you how to do it. At least, some small example I'll show you.
Ma'am, you are set to share the screen.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am. Now,
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
fine. So, okay. So my first library is when you wanted to access any of the financial data directly from the, from the online. So there is a library called Quant Mode, and then we have some other library. But I'm more interested to tell you that Garch modeling library. So in the R model, first of all, you have to install the package, and then you have to run the library. Though I've already installed, but for your convenient, I'm just typing it again. So this is the, this is the command for installing the package. Okay. So you can run this and then you can run the library. So when I am running the install packages, you can see this model is getting installed, and then we have a library RuGarch. Okay, rest of the files I also run. Okay, fine. Now, so in this application, I have taken one Apple stock. Okay, Apple daily stock prices I have taken. I have taken it from 2008 to 2020. So this is the library for, this is the function for getting online data for the Apple stock. You can say the get symbols and then you can type like that. I will share you the code. Don't worry about it. You just be very, free your mind and you just listen to me right now. And then you have a chart series. So there you can plot the chart. You can see there is a plot. Okay, there is a plot available, and but I'm more interested to see the closing price. You can see the Apple once I've just a second. So when I would be doing this, so I'm more interested to see the closing price. So I've run the closing price. You can see here, you can see the closing price data of the Apple. Okay, now you can see in this part also, you can see this data. Is it visible to all of you?
Yes,
Yes,
perfect.
ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, fine. So you can see this Apple stock price, which I've taken from 2008 to 2020. Here you can see we have a jumps. Okay, we have jump, and this side we have a lot of jumps. So definitely what I am assuming that there is a volatility clustering in this point in somewhere 2019-20. Okay, I find this is more in this point. Then there are some clustering in this point 2015-16 and then 2012 and 13. Okay, so now going back to the just to confirm statistically whether this is present or not, first let me calculate the return of the closing price. Let me first calculate the return. So I will run this one. So it has calculated return. So my return series is calculated. I wanted to see the heads of my return series. Okay, I'll show you the heads of my return. So you can see this is my Apple closing price 2008. This is only header. Okay, it's not the entire data. Just to show you this, these are my return series of Apple closing price. Okay, now I wanted to see the histogram of returns. So this is my histogram for the return series. Now you can see after seeing the histogram, what you can identify, this data is not normal. Okay, this is my observation. This data is not normal. Again, what I will do, I will plot normal curve T distribution here in this plot. So this will give me more clear understanding about it. Just a wait. Now look at this data. Can you see that, all of you?
Yeah. Yes.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fine. This red chart. Okay, so basically this red chart, it talks about the normal curve. Okay, this green chart talks about the T distribution, the fitted distribution, not T, the fitted distribution. And this blue line, this shows about the density of this data. So you can see the green line is more fitting to the actual data than the red line. Red line is a normal curve. You can see here the green line, which is, I think you are able to see that the green line is much more fitting to the data than the red line, right? So first assumption which I visualize, statistically again I can say that this is not normally distributed. My data is not normally distributed. But after seeing this peaked excess peak and flatter tails, what I can say, T distribution would be fitted in this data. Okay, because this is leptokurtosis. This data is showing the leptokurtosis properties. It is having high peak and this is having flatter tails. Okay, so this is one observation. Okay, now this is my return series. Okay, now you can see after seeing the return series, what you can analyze. I think this will give you a clear picture. Now you can analyze, we have a lots of volatility clustering. You can see around 2008, 2009, then around 2019, 2020. So we have, and then around there also we have somewhere 2012, 13. So on an average, it is near, on an average, it is, you can see around the zero, but there are observations which are, going beyond, those are going away from the mean line. So there is a volatility clustering, I can assure. Okay. Now, what I wanted to do, okay. All right. So now this is my Garch model. So how do we write the equation? You can just have a glimpse. So we have a library called ugarch, as I told you. Then we have a function called ugarch spec. Okay, in ugarch spec, if you remember, we had three equations. One is called variance equation, mean equation, and then we have a distribution model. Okay, so here we present it as a variance model, mean model, and distribution model. So variance model, how do we write? We write list model standard Garch, because we are using Garch 1-1 model. So we write standard Garch. Garch order is 1-1. Then we will specify the mean model. Mean model, we will write ARIMA term. ARIMA order is 0, 0. We are not using any, auto-regressive moving average terms here. It's a constant mean model. Okay, it's a constant mean model. The equation which I presented you in the PPT, the same thing which I'm writing. I'm not including any RMA order term. Okay, and then we have a distribution model. You can see it here. This is the norm. Norm means normal distribution. So here I am specifying norm. Okay, when I run this model, okay, so I'm running this model here. Just a second, just pop up. I run this model. Now I need to fit this model. So for fitting this model, there is an tool with Garch fit equation. There's another equation, ugarch fit. So in ugarch fit, there are two parameters which we need to give. First is spec is equals to n, which I've already run before, and then data. I need to give my data series. So data is my return. I will run this model also, and then I will just see the output. So this is my output. Can you see that output, everybody? Because now the important parts begin. Can you see, all of you?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Now the Garch model fit. This is my output. Now this is very important part. Of course, the R coding and all you will get online also, or I will also share. But how to read the output, that's important. So my Garch model is a standard Garch 1-1 model. Mean model is constant mean model because all the ARIMA term is 0. Distribution model, it is normally distributed model which I have used in my data. Now these are the optimal parameters, mu, omega, alpha, and beta. Now mu stands for, if you remember the mean equation, it was RT is equals to A naught plus under root of HT error term T. Okay, so that mu specify the A naught, the constant excess mean that represent the excess mean in the return equation. Omega represent the second variance model. In the variance model, we have sigma square T is equals to alpha naught plus beta 1 HT minus 1 plus alpha 1 error square T minus 1, right? So alpha naught, the constant term in the variance equation, that represent by omega. Okay, omega represents that constant term. Alpha 1 represent the coefficient of error term. You can write it down somewhere. So alpha 1 represent the coefficient of error term, which is epsilon square T minus 1, if you remember in the equation. And beta 1 represent the volatility lag coefficient. Understood? So once again, I'm repeating, mu represent the A naught, which is the excess return in the return equation, in the mean equation. Okay. Omega represent the constant term in the variance equation. alpha 1 represent the error term coefficient and beta 1 represent the volatility past the lag volatility coefficient. Okay, so these are the four parameters we have. Now you look at the p probability value. So these all are 0. That says that all the coefficients are significant. Okay, these all coefficients are significant. So basically, if I see the beta 1, it is 0.8405, let's say 0.84. So that means our present volatility, the current volatility will depends upon the past value, which is 0.84, I mean 0.84 sigma square t minus 1. So this is the high domination, like it depends upon the past volatility. So that itself shows there is a volatility clustering, because the basic pillar was in the volatility clustering, there is serial correlation. Volatility clustering have the serial correlation. Past value depends upon present value, depends upon the past value. And you can see in the model output that our present value of the volatility depends upon the past value, and which is very, very high in domination, right? 0.84. Then it is again depending upon the error term, which is 0.12. Of course, there are few innovations which are left out. So that is again present. That is the impact of the news. Okay. Something which is not captured by the past volatility, which is coming very sudden to the market or which is shocking to the market. This is captured by epsilon term, and there is the coefficient alpha. Okay, so this is something innovation or idiosyncratic news, or you can say idiosyncratic factors which are getting absorbed by or getting impact or they are impacting to the our current volatility. So there are robustness standard error. These all are significant. We need not to look for, worry about that. Now coming to the information criteria. So when you run multiple models, how do you identify which model is the good one? Yes.
Madam, can you please go for the beta 1 explanation? It is basically the past volatility coefficient of the error term.
Yes. No. Past volatility of the past volatility, not volatility. First of all, I got confused after listening. It's a coefficient of the past volatility. This is how we say it's a sigma square t minus 1. Or do you remember the equation? If you have the, I did not share the PPT, but you remember the h t minus 1 term, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. H and
Beta.
epsilon term. Yes.
Not epsilon.
E term, error term actually.
There were two terms in the variance model. The one, how it goes. I'll tell you once again. Just hold for a while. It's the HT is equals to alpha naught plus beta 1 HT minus 1. This is the past volatility plus alpha 1 E minus 1. Let's say I'm saying E square minus 1. Instead of epsilon, I'm saying E square minus 1 for your convenience. So this beta 1 is basically the coefficient of past volatility, which is represented by HT minus 1. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So basically our current volatility in the variance model, what we are modeling, basically we are modeling the volatility, right? We are modeling the current volatility so that we can project the future volatility of the return, or let's say stock prices or the time series. So in the variance model, our present volatility will depends on two terms. First is my past volatility, it will depend, and other is the error term, it will be depending. So error term coefficient is alpha 1, which is 0.12. Okay, and past volatility coefficient is 0.84. So what I'm trying to say, the ARCH model, it says telling me that there is a volatility clustering and there is a lot of serial correlation. My present volatility is depending on the past volatility, which is but the 0.84. Are you getting my point? And rest
Yes,
of
ma'am.
the volatility is depending upon the idiosyncratic news in the market or idiosyncratic factors in the market, which is 0.12. So my
That
present
means E term.
volatility is
That
most
means
of the
alpha. Madam, that is alpha 1 term is basically the E term.
E term. E-term is nothing but the error term, or we also called is the innovation or idiosyncratic news, or any news, any shock to the market which is not absorbed. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So error term is what? What is error? Error is something which is not being captured by the model or which is not present in the data. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Whereas,
Ma'am. Hello.
yes, yes.
Ma'am, the present variance is
Hmm.
equal to the constant term,
Hmm.
then the coefficient of the previous volatility, that means HT minus 1,
Correct.
that I denote by beta 1,
Beta 1.
and the coefficient, that is alpha 1, of the previous error term.
Of the previous error term. Correct.
Okay, that is the alpha.
That is the alpha. I hope you understood now.
Yes,
Correct.
yes, ma'am. It is
Okay.
clear, ma'am.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say that our beta coefficient is very much dominating, right? That means our present volatility is depending most of the time and heavily depending upon the past value of the volatility. Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am,
So here you
ma'am,
can see the
ma'am,
volatility clustering is coming into the picture. How the
Let the ma'am complete the, then we have a discussion. I think let ma'am complete. There is a good
Okay,
discussion is going on. And you can.
yeah, I think yeah, I
Okay,
think it would be better. So
okay,
what
ma'am.
I was yeah, so what I understand this is really interesting, and the point is it's also tough to understand for the people, but that's okay. We are here, we will discuss, and we have a next session also. We'll discuss in detail. Okay, coming
Go
to,
on with the AIs.
sorry.
Ma'am, go on AIC. You
Hello?
are talking on AIC. Yes, ma'am. You are talking on AIC, na?
Yeah, AIC criteria. So we are talking about information criteria. So these information criteria are very much important. So when you have multiple models, if you're running the multiple model, let's say you're running GARCH 1.1 model, then you also run GARCH in mean model, then you also run GARCH, let's say GARCH is student T model. Instead of normal variant, you are running the student T variant. So how do you identify which model is the best fitted for you? You will always find some parameters here, and there would be some parameters, some values will be there. So first you have to look at the probability value of the parameters, whether the coefficients which you are getting are significant or not. So if the probability value is 0, that means you are saying that your coefficients are significant, because null hypothesis is coefficients are not significant. Okay, so rejecting null hypothesis and you are accepting the alternative hypothesis. And the second thing is looking at the information criteria. So you should have these values should be lower for the other models, or any of the model which has the lowest values of the information criteria. That model is much more efficient than the other competitive one. Okay, so these are the things. And the third thing which I would like to share with you, yes. Now coming to the standard residual test. So you can see the null hypothesis says no. So this is called the diagnosis of the model. So where you have the residuals and you will be running some test. And then you wanted to see whether the model is best fitted or not, whether the model is consistent and compatible or not. So for the residual test, you will understand whether the model's residuals are proper or they are normally distributed. First of all, they should not have any serial correlation. Okay, so here the null hypothesis says no serial correlation. Your p values are above 5%, right? So you can accept the null hypothesis. That means there are no serial correlation. Your residuals are fine. Your residuals are not serially correlated. So this is the one thing you will be checking. Now, other important thing you wanted to check is the goodness of fit. Okay, so that goodness of fit will tell you whether the model is the good fit or not, or there is any scope for model improvement. So here, if your p value is greater than 5%, then you will accept the model is good fit. But if your p value is less than 5%, let's say here the p values are very less, near to 0. So that says that there is a scope of model improvement. Okay, and these all things, if you write down in the paper and if you try to make a flow chart, you will understand. We have sometimes back, we have seen here, just a second, we have seen by seeing the histogram. If you remember this one, yeah, by seeing this graph, we understood that the normal distribution will not be fitted. And so far, I run the GARCH 1-1 model with the normal distribution. And my model also says there is a scope for the model improvement. Okay, and from the histogram also, I'm understanding that the normal curve is not fitting. So there is a scope for the other model to build upon and then to predict the future prices, or let's say future returns. So here, the next session which I would be using the student T distribution and some other models also I would be using. And then today, what I would be doing, I would be floating you some case, or let's say some research paper which you can study, and then I will give you a small case based upon the today's discussion. Let's see how far you are able to identify or you are able to implement those things. So over to Biju. I think I've already crossed the time. Time is
Yeah.
already
Okay.
1:12.
Yes. So, any questions? Ask please, because only two minutes we can take for answering
Yeah,
questions.
Professor Viju, there's a request. So can we have the data file that madam is using along with this R script file so that we can practice on our own?
Aarti, what about?
Yes, definitely. I will give you. I want you guys to practice. I won't mind sharing it with you. Maybe in 1 or 2 hours, it will be with you. Okay.
That will be great. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. If
Hello, madam.
Yes.
if you have no questions, we can conclude Aarti sessions today. Tomorrow, Aarti will be with us with the practice sessions using R. And Aarti is also interested to conduct, workshops in connection with these areas. If you have interested in this, you can participate. We will organize programs.
Yeah, actually, see, I was thinking to have a particular workshop on this quant applications, in the quant finance applications, using Arch and GARCH model and time series data using our applications. So somewhere in December we might plan, because at that time I would be little free. So if I would be receiving a good feedback from this session, if you're able to understand me or if you're finding it interesting, we can further think of having a workshop in collaboration where we can discuss in detail. Let's say it would be maybe a week workshop for 7 days, or something like that, because I hope you understand the complexity of the models or time series data. So it requires a lot of time to understand, and then if you're modeling in R, it requires a time to grasp, and then we can come up with some more practical example. In a limited time, it's very difficult to teach some complex models.
Yeah, we can start from the basics and
Yeah, we can start with the
it's like-
basics. Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow Aarti will be continued with the practice session. So thank you so much for the excellent delivery of contents here.
Thank you, Biju.
On
Thank
behalf
you.
of the
We shall be meeting tomorrow, and I would be sharing all the information maybe in an hour. Okay.
PPT also will be shared, and the data set also will be shared. And
Yeah, PPT is already with Biju. I request him to share with you all, and data and the code I would be sharing with you all. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Aarti.
Thank you.
So we will have a break and we will come back 2:15 sharp. Simon sir will continue. Okay. Okay, Aarti, thank you.
Okay. Bye.